everybody. I'm joined by Cebekhulu, who is from Syked, who is one of our partners and has been working with her for the last couple of years on one of the programs we run called Restore. Lusanda is a psychologist, and we thought it would be really cool to get her insights on how challenging the entrepreneurial journey is for entrepreneurs and their mental health and well-being. So Lusanda, it's awesome to have you chat with us. We are very keen to hear from your perspective. How challenging is it for entrepreneurs to really operate at an optimal level when they are under a lot of duress and stress and the pressures are relentless? I often have entrepreneurs say, the journey is so lonely. Do you have many of your patients that you see? Do they suffer from the same? And what role does loneliness play in not just the entrepreneurial journey, but I think just with mental health in general, and how does it affect us as humans?
Thanks, Lindsay, and thank you so much for having me. You're raising a very important concern that we often see within the entrepreneurial space, where you find that, when a person goes into the business world, they have goals. The goal is, I've got a dream, I want to make it work, and that's it. But what they are not prepared for emotionally is the journey to getting there.
Yeah.
It is the journey to getting to the bottom line. It is the hardships, it's the pressures, it's the long hours, and the loneliness that you speak about. Where does this loneliness come from? Number one, for you to succeed, there's time that needs to be invested. There's anxiety that comes with that, because one sits with fears. Am I going to make it? Am I not going to make it? And it does not help as well that society also has certain expectations for the will-be entrepreneur and what they're supposed to be achieving. And so you find that individuals sit with a lot of stress that they can't quite communicate, because already they've been labeled as being successful already. So who do they tell? How safe is it for them to be vulnerable? Because the fear is, if I am vulnerable, people will think that I'm not good enough. And so therein comes in that negative voice, the negative self-talk. And as that gets to compound, the loneliness increases, because who do I tell? Because there's so much. And so you find that individuals will sit with a lot of shame.
Absolutely. And especially if you fail, because failure is a very real part of this journey and a very necessary part. But not everyone, and certainly not society, makes it easy for us to fail. Or really understands why it's important to fail. So what can we do about this loneliness? Is there anything that you would recommend?
Okay, the first part is the internal parts, where one gets to remember that they're still human. In spite of all the dreams that they have, in spite of all that they may have achieved already, they're still human. So the big part starts with learning to be with yourself. Learning to talk with yourself. I often say, I often hear entrepreneurs speaking at themselves, not with themselves. You know what the difference is therein? If you're talking at yourself, you often berate yourself. You're often hard on yourself. But when you talk with yourself, there's compassion. A simple way of putting it, talking with yourself as you would a friend, as you would a child, where you have the utmost patience and understanding that, like I said, you're human. That's the one thing that I'd like to drive across. That outside of your dreams and aspirations, you will still feel and you will still think. And it's okay. Spend time with yourself. Reflect on your days. Reflect on what works. Reflect on what does not work. Understand why it is not working. Sometimes it may be on you. Sometimes it's external. And you don't have to own all the other mishaps that happen from what would be external variables. So I'm saying the biggest part is positive self-talk. And knowing that there are safe spaces where you can go to and open up and share about how you're feeling.
Absolutely. I think that reflection is such a valuable insight and something that we don't build into our daily schedules. Time to actually just pause and think about how the day played out, what worked, like you said, what didn't work, and then kind of just really think about that and intentionally learn from that. And something that we weren't really taught growing up, the power of reflection and just letting things really land. So building in that time seems almost impossible sometimes for people who are busy. But I think for you to really be optimal and to be able to really, I feel, show up as your best self, that reflection is so important in understanding what works for you and what doesn't, and helps you inform setting your boundaries.
Absolutely, absolutely. That is very, very important, the boundaries. And when we speak boundaries, I often hear individuals, labeling boundaries as conflict. I'll show them off, I'll tell them off. That is not boundaries, Lindsay. When we speak boundaries, we're speaking about rules that you set for yourself in terms of what is permissible and what is not permissible. And I must add, when we speak boundaries, we're not only talking about other people. It's the boundaries that you set for yourself.
100%.
It's recognizing that right now I'm feeling tired, I'm feeling overwhelmed, and pausing. That's a boundary that you set for yourself to not push yourself to the ground. Very important. So if you would wish for other people to really acknowledge and respect your boundaries, you've got to start first, because you'd be surprised that people look at how we treat ourselves and they learn from how we position ourselves. So it's important that it starts here, and then set your boundaries with other people. I'll give you a quick, let me call it, reflection on how to do it. Firstly, identify what boundary needs to be set. Understand that it's not a battle, it's not conflict. Communicate your position. Acknowledge what the other person is also saying, because you want to communicate your boundaries empathically. So it's not oh no, I cannot do this because you are. No, it's I hear you. However, my position is I am not able to at this point in time, but I hear what you're saying. Maybe seek help elsewhere. And I know the guilt will come in. Lindsay, the anxiety is big out there.
Absolutely. I think it's a huge pressure point, and it's linked to so many things on the entrepreneurial journey and beyond. And maybe we could speak to anxiety. It's so there are endless reasons to be anxious. I think just this modern life that we live, and also with running a business, there's so many things that really are out of your control. So how do we get a grip on that anxiety, and how do we better cope with it? I don't think we can squash it. I don't think we can just wave a magic wand. I also think it has a place. I think it is a tool as well to warn us when danger is coming, or when we should really be mindful of something in particular. But how do we really utilize anxiety to our benefit, but also learn how to work better with it?
Prioritize, be intentional are the key ones. When I say prioritize, what are my plans? Because when we speak anxiety, we speak a sense of feeling overwhelmed, because there's a whole lot of things coming in your direction at the same time, and you're not sure what to take and what not to take. Breathe, learn mindfulness strategies. Take the time to take short breaks in your day. Prioritize, plan your day. Know that at this time, this is what I plan to do. And I'm quite mindful that, again, within this space, there's a lot of unforeseen things that may come up,
Ain't that the truth?
Absolutely. So having that in your mind, and being intentional about managing your day as best as you can. The anxiety will hit, absolutely. I said we are human, don't ever forget that. So we shall feel.
Yes.
And like you said, anxiety also serves a functional purpose at times, because it becomes like an indicator that tells you that you're overwhelmed and you need to breathe, pause. Don't be shy to just go out of your
Take
office.
a moment.
Literally walk to your car. Just get your lunchbox. That 2-minute walk, being out in the sun, will do wonders for you. That is you almost grounding yourself because you're using your senses. Just looking outside and hearing different sounds brings you back to the now. Because with anxiety, we're often stuck in our minds because we start to overthink. And anxiety, as a matter of interest, Lindsay, resides very much in the future and in the past.
Yes.
So it's the worry about what happened back then and what is likely to happen in the future, or what is likely to not happen in the future. So, but what about what is happening in the now?
Yeah.
What can you change in the now? Sometimes you can't change it, but that acknowledgement is good enough. A recognition of why I can't change this right now is good enough. Seek the resources that you may need, supportive resources that are at your disposal, with no fear or shame. And it's okay, by the way, to talk when you're struggling.
Yes, it's imperative.
Absolutely.
It's imperative. I think that leads us to our next topic, which is the stigmatism. Mental health, I think it's COVID, one of maybe the only silver lining has been that people were thrust into having to talk about and really just acknowledge that mental health is a real issue. However, across our multifaceted country, we still, regardless of race, religion, and culture, there still seems to be very heavy stigmatism when it comes to mental health. How do we address that? How do we show up as our best selves? And also create spaces for the people that we care for, our colleagues. How do we promote positive mental health? And also, how do we talk about this? So many people still feel like they will be judged, that they're weak if they do put up their hand and they say, I have an issue. It's multifaceted and it's so different. It's different from males, females. There's so many angles here. How would you advise someone who is unable or doesn't feel like they can put their hand up and say, I'm unwell, I know that I'm depressed, who can I go to? They don't feel like they can actually communicate with their loved ones because it's taboo. What would you recommend that someone do in a scenario like that?
Okay. Firstly, work on the self-talk. Because these fears, the stigma that you allude to, Lindsay, starts from childhood, where boys are told, for example, cowboys don't cry, boys don't cry. And females, likewise. You don't share what is happening in the home with the outside world. So people sit with this shame. So it starts with, firstly, changing how they look at what they're experiencing. Like I said, we start with talking with self, recognizing that I'm not okay, and identifying within your network, within your communities, your social communities, your work communities, what are the safe spaces that are available? Who can I trust? Because just because you're feeling it, and we are here saying we need to talk, but we don't have to be talking to everyone. Because sometimes we speak to people who cannot hold space for us.
Yes.
Who are not safe.
Yeah, we need to be discerning.
Absolutely. Which part is the safest for me within this community? Which part can I go and tap into? You know, find those people. There's counseling available. You know, I mean, there's virtual sessions because I know there's so much stigma as well around going to your local medical office and being seen by the community and seeing a mental health practitioner. Book a virtual session. You know, there are tons of self-help resources that are also available. And I recognize the fact that, of course, depending on where one is, perhaps self-help is no longer going to be enough. And so you may need the intervention of a professional.
Yes.
So yes, go and seek that kind of intervention. Have your sessions in the comfort of your own home without anyone seeing you. But start by just being kinder to yourself and finding your safe spaces. And I would say, Lindsay, You find them now. We don't wait for a crisis as a matter of interest.
Have you heard that?
Yes.
You don't wait for a crisis.
Absolutely. I spoke about boundaries. Know who is safe for you, who's within your circle of boundaries, who's safe for you. Those are the people that you lean to. Those are the people that you tap into. Of course, I'm not saying have counseling sessions with your loved ones. No, they're not qualified for that. But just for you to say, today wasn't a good day is enough. And seeing them just give you that reassuring look will feel validating. And it will encourage you to book that session as well if you are still struggling with just making the decision from the get-go.
Yeah.
Recognize what is happening. Take your time. Like I said, let's learn to talk with ourselves.
The validation is something that is so necessary. So I do think when you are looking and seeking out those safe spaces where space can be held, it's who can validate you. I think that's critical. That's
cool. And I say that, Lindsay, I understand that, people will often again hear very misconstrued narratives about, oh no, you shouldn't seek validation. No, I'm talking about a safe space. I'm talking about healthy kind of validation. Not the validation that becomes your oxygen to breathe, but just that look that says, I see you, I hear you, is good enough.
Yeah.
But of course, everything rests here. You are the master of your own universe, and you do have the ability. For the fact that you are where you are today is evidence enough that you can. And it's something that we often forget, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What tools can we use to bring in some more balance, some more joy? I'm particularly fortunate to have people around me who make me laugh. Something like humor, actively seeking that out as and again, it sounds like these are such silly little things, but after a good laugh, how empowering is that? It's incredible. So what other things that are literally at our fingertips can really, and it could be a good meme, it could be a quick joke, it could be exercise. What other things do we have at our fingertips that we could use to help better and improve our mental well-being?
Lindsay, I like how you say what works for you is humor, for example.
Yes.
So let me put this out there. Our journeys are quite unique. So what works for you may not necessarily work for me. So I'm saying this at the back of so much, let's call it social media influences right now on what works. So we're often told, go to the spa. That's your way to debrief and you're going to feel good. But I may not necessarily have the funds to be going to a spa.
And I can't do that every day.
Absolutely. So personalize it. So what can you do? Self-care, self-care. Self-care, by the way, starts with what are we eating? It can be quite tempting, for us to be snacking throughout the day because we've got a lot of work to do. Oh, and there's long hours, mind you. And
Very long hours.
Yeah, they actually mean snack in between. Let's choose healthier options. Let's choose more nutritious kinds of foods. Let's be intentional, I said earlier on. Plan your day. What am I eating throughout the day? You have an understanding of what your routine looks like. Plan that, Have your 5 lunch boxes in your bag that you will continuously be tapping into. That's an easy one. Number 2, you speak about exercise. Very important. But someone else might say, I am not a gym fanatic. I am so sorry. I can't do that. And that's okay. You don't have to. But you could be exercising at home, for example. You could be on YouTube and doing these home exercises. You would be amazed at how good one gets to feel after an exercise. Typically in the mornings, you feel energized. You've got clarity of thought. You're able to think clearly. Whatever you may have been thinking about going into bed the previous night, that is gone. It's no longer weighing heavily on you. So exercise is good. We talk about, we speak about social media. You want to go into maybe memes that make you laugh, etc. I'm going to put in a big disclaimer on that one, though. I know we want to be on social media and it feels relaxing, but just be mindful. There are certain things that trigger us on social media.
The rabbit hole.
Oh, absolutely. Right? That's a big one. So I'm saying maybe, so if social media does it for you, but just be mindful. What are you consuming?
Yeah.
Who are you following? Just noticing. Sometimes you may be following certain individuals that you thought would inspire you, but after watching whatever content they put out there, you feel bad. You feel inadequate. So no, unfollow that, but find what works for you.
It doesn't help with that inner dialogue. You know, if it doesn't help, if it doesn't serve you, let it go.
Absolutely. Sleep is important. We need enough hours of sleep. And I know someone might be saying, Lusanda, but you've just said it. It's the long hours, it's the pressure. That is a fact. But as you put in the work as well, let's look at the amount of hours, or rather the times that we have in between that we end up wasting.
Yeah.
Because if you're sitting on social media for an hour and a half,
or if you're tired,
right?
it takes longer for you to do things. You aren't as sharp. So sometimes again, it's really being intentional. Try and get those extra hours of sleep because you actually function better the next day.
Absolutely. There's music. You know, put in your earphones and listen to your favorite song. Podcasts. You know, for some of us that works. Listen to inspirational stuff. You know, stuff that empowers you.
Yeah.
That can be a debriefing whilst you're busy doing some work. So in between, you're having this good feeling, this positive, you know, messaging that you're listening to, and you're still putting in the work. So what is it that matters to you? Find your hobbies. And please,
absolutely,
play. Please don't minimize play. Play is very important.
So important.
Right?
And it's actually a discipline now because we are so stretched for time. But when we play, when we are out connecting with people, physically doing things with our hands, the hobbies, all this play really helps us be our creative best, I feel. It takes us out of those deep, anxious situations as well and really just brings some sort of semblance of balance and normalcy. There's another question I'd like to ask. What should people look out for when trying to find a therapist that they can work with? Would you have a roadmap that you could kind of share with people? How would they go about finding the right therapist for them?
A very important one. Because again, people often think, once I see a therapist, all will be well. But sometimes you may be going into a space with an individual that you can't resonate with. You've got to ask yourself, what are my needs currently? I'll give you an example. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm having now romantic relationship problems. And I'm thinking, oh, I don't think I'm comfortable to speak to a female. Yes, we are objective. Yes, we are professional. But for you, that feels like a bias. So be intentional and say to yourself, okay, I want to speak to a male. I'd like to maybe speak to a male who looks like me, who sounds like me, who's a part of my community. Those are nuances that we often miss, but that are quite critical and that sometimes discourage individuals from the therapy space because you go in there and you're not comfortable with the person that you're sitting with and you're not fully participating. And you then come out feeling that, you know what, this doesn't work. Another thing as well, let's not self-diagnose. Because the challenge therein is you've already diagnosed. I mean, at this point in time, social media has got so many mental health gurus who are giving us these symptoms, etc. So you go into the therapy space and you are sitting with, you know, a practitioner who says, I do not see that, I see the other. And because you went in there with an expectation that you wanted someone to go and validate that, actually, this is what I'm suffering from. That becomes a barrier. So I'm saying, as you look for who you want and how you want to be seen, do I want to be seen virtually? Am I comfortable with sitting with someone one-on-one like this? Also factor in the expectations that you have. Know that you know a lot about your life, but at the same time, you need an objective eye to assist with threading in all of the things and weaving them in that are happening in your life. So just go in, you know, and be vulnerable and open to the journey.
And if you do have a therapist that you've worked with, is that it? Is that person for you for whenever other things might crop up that are too big for you to deal with without the support of a professional? Would you say it's a lifelong relationship, or does that change up according to your needs?
Oh, actually, it's the needs. You know, because the journey is quite unique. You may have seen therapist A, and they helped a great deal, but they're purely for that purpose. It's okay for you to now say, you know what, because I'm dealing with this, I want to speak to somebody else. Of course, in an ideal world, we would wish for you to be continuing with the one person that you started with. But if for whatever reason you want to change, that is okay. You know, it's something that you can do for yourself. And another important one at the back of what you're asking me is, when do I go to see a therapist? Do I go because there's a crisis? You know, because what we often see in the therapy space is that, you know, entrepreneurs come into the space because there's a crisis. The crisis gets managed and they immediately want to exit. But they exit before we get an opportunity to now capacitate them with what would be life skills that they would need in navigating different areas of their lives. So it's quite important as well that you understand that we're not only there for crisis, you know.
Importantly, you were there between the crises to build that capacity so that we get to deal with the difficulties in our lives that come at us constantly.
Yes, think of your therapist as a mirror. So even if there's no crisis, you just want to go in and have someone who's going to be a mirror and say to you, well, what is happening here? Did you see this? What do you think? So it is just a safe, reflective space that is always available to you, you know, because in so doing, you start to own up and own the wellness journey as your own and not that of the therapist because they're there to help manage my crises.
Imposter syndrome, Lusanda, I think a lot of people kind of wonder what that is. I mean, syndrome, it's all quite dramatic. But I think as humans, I think we do have these inner voices and we have these dialogues with ourselves. Can I do it? Am I good enough? Will I succeed? What will they think of me? Am I enough? Firstly, where does this come from? Why are we like this? Why? And how do we work with that? Again, these are not things that we can just squash. There's certain aspects of ourselves that we can't just forever. And they're obviously there for a reason. But why is that inner critic? Why are these conversations that we have with ourselves? Why are we so hard on ourselves? And what are the ramifications, or where can that lead to if we just continue with these critical dialogues?
You know, individuals often underestimate the impact that our past have on our present. So whatever was put in when we were children, the languaging, the messaging, you know, the jokes, the banter that was put in actually becomes the ingredients that form who we are. And I'll give you a quick example so that I can show you where imposter syndrome also comes in. You know, growing up, one would have been told, you know, there would be jokes around, oh, you're so tall, you're so thin, you're so fat, oh, you're so silly, you're so stupid. Do you know that for a child who has not fully developed that kind of emotional comprehension, they don't understand that it's a joke. Whilst everyone laughs, but no one is checking how they feel. And so those messages are what we grow up with.
Get locked in.
Absolutely. They actually become like the lens. Literally, it's the emotional lens that one uses to navigate the environment. So it looks like when one is now doing well, remember the messaging was, you're stupid, you're silly, and all of the other negative words, hurtful words. So they go in and they continuously believe that they're not good enough because there was no one back then who put in positive messaging. So going into the working world, now you've started your own business and things are not going well because it's part of the journey. That gets to validate that belief that got deeply entrenched back then. It is going into a meeting and you're struggling to present, pitch to an investor, for example, a potential client, and the negative voice says, "You're silly. You're not even good looking, by the way. Did you see how they looked at you?" Already.
It's terrible how undermining it is.
Yes, and it's internal. It's internal because that is what was put in. So, on the flip side, now here you are and you're actually doing well. You're achieving all of your dreams, right? And as things are going well and you're getting positive feedback, you're getting validation. Remember, there's that negative self-belief that was planted back then at the age of 9? That little voice says, it can't have been you, it was pure luck. Now imposter syndrome is creeping in. That is when it's these now beliefs that I can't. It's the beliefs that I'm not good enough. And so what do? You're sitting in a meeting, you've got your board of directors now giving you positive feedback. And all you can say is, yeah, I think the client was an easy one this time around. So you can't even take and own the fact that you put in the work. Because it was luck. Because the belief that got entrenched back then was, you can't do anything. You come from a poor background. You can't leave this place. Remember when you started your business and there were people saying, who do you think you are? Why are you leaving the corporate space? Etc. Those voices tend to compound what was already planted back then. And so it informs how you receive what is happening. And unfortunately, will have a negative impact at some point on your output because you get easily discouraged. Anything that just does not go according to plan becomes a catastrophe. We actually have a label for it. You catastrophize.
Worst case scenario all the time.
It's the end of the world because you don't believe that you can. So even when now you've made it, now money is flowing in. You struggle to even spend that money wisely because you feel like it's not due to you. You feel like you don't deserve it.
It's self-doubt.
Because I'm an imposter. Hence the imposter syndrome. So you don't own it and you don't fully enjoy it. So you've got the gains because I know within individuals listening today, there's someone who thinks, actually, Lusanda, this is not my story. My story is things are going well, but I'm still unhappy. What is happening? What are your core beliefs is what you should ask yourself. Did I ever believe that I can? Was it planted in me that I can, that I'm worthy? And that is why we exist. Remember, there's no crisis at that point, but we assist you within the counseling space to challenge these negative narratives. And unlearn is what you need to do. Unlearn all that which no longer serves you, and then start learning a newer narrative for yourself. Remember, every single day is like a blank page where you get an opportunity to write. And by the way, I must mention this, Lindsay, because for some individuals, these messages have been a continuous part of their life. Sometimes they will get it right. And then a month later, the negativity creeps in.
Yes.
And a person starts to think, actually, I can't do this.
You've got to practice.
You've got to practice because remember, what you're trying to do is you're trying to unlearn many years worth of patterns.
Yes.
Maybe over 25 years worth of patterns. So it will take time. Not another 25 years, of course, but it will take practice. So let's be intentional.
Exactly. Yeah. The word intentional really plays out massively. And I think you really need to think about how you speak to yourself, how you show up, and how you acknowledge your needs. And if we are intentional about these things and honest with ourselves, it's easier for us to seek out the right kind of help and support.
Absolutely. And another important one that I really would encourage entrepreneurs to get used to, like I said, take time on a daily basis if you can, on your drive back home, because I know time is not necessarily on our side. Before you sleep, take time to ask yourself a couple of questions. How was my day? My day was horrible. Ask yourself what made it that way. How did I contribute to that, perhaps? Because we must also hold ourselves accountable. That's not always the world. Sometimes it is our fears. We're not being malicious, but our fears push us in that direction of thinking that we are being victimized.
Yes.
So, is there anything that I can do differently tomorrow? Are the questions you ask yourself. Try and do this daily. Even if you're not doing it, when you're going to sleep, in between your meetings. How did that go? How was that? What can I do differently next time? Because that enables you to check out
Absolutely.
of each different context. And not have contexts bleeding into each other all the time.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your input. Can you tell us a little bit about Lusanda? Where do you practice out of? How can people get hold of you if they would like to?
So I'm a clinical psychologist by profession, and I'm with a company called Syked. We're an online wellness company that focuses on providing counseling services, psychotherapy services to entrepreneurs. I mean, we've been with you, Lindsay, in the Restore program for quite a number of years now, where we have been supporting entrepreneurs. And so we have an understanding of the challenges that are out there. For someone who's not an entrepreneur, we're still available because the service that we provide is quite holistic. It is reactive, but it is also proactive in the sense that we advocate a lot for self-help as well. So as part of the service offering that we have at Syked, we also offer self-help tools that are available on our website. One can find us on www.syked.co.za, SYKED, because we want to get you psyched online.
Thanks so much, Lusanda. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.